Cole Harding had lived his whole life under the wide Montana sky, where the horizon stretched so far it felt like the world had no walls. He was a quiet rancher, the kind of man who spoke more to his cattle than to people. His days were long and predictable: mornings checking water troughs, afternoons repairing fences, and evenings watching the sun fade behind the hills. But lately, nothing felt steady anymore. The long, dry season had taken its toll on the land he depended on. Grass that once grew thick and healthy now lay thin and brittle. Streams that used to run clear had turned into narrow ribbons of water. Every week, Cole felt the weight of worry growing inside him. His cattle needed more grazing land, but his own property couldn't provide enough anymore. He drove out every morning hoping to see patches of green grass sprouting somewhere, anywhere. But the land stayed stubbornly dry. Every rancher he talked to had the same complaint. Some sold their cattle, others rented land miles away. Cole didn't want to do either. His ranch had been in his family for generations. He felt responsible for keeping it alive. One warm afternoon, while riding along the edge of his property, Cole noticed a stretch of land beyond an old wooden fence. He had seen it before, many times, but he never paid much attention to it. The grass there looked different, taller, greener, untouched. It looked like everything he wished his own land could be. He knew it wasn't his. He also knew it belonged to the nearby Blackfoot Nation. A place people spoke of with respect, sometimes even with a hint of mystery. Cole stopped his horse and stared at the land for a long moment. The breeze carried the smell of sagebrush. Birds circled lazily in the distance. He tried to convince himself he was only looking, not considering anything more. But as he watched the healthy grass swaying softly, he felt a temptation he had never felt before. He told himself it wouldn't hurt to check it out, just a quick ride. He wasn't planning to damage anything. He only wanted to see if it truly was as untouched as it looked. Maybe he could bring his cattle later, just for a short time, until his land recovered. These thoughts swirled around in his mind, making the wrong idea feel almost reasonable. After a long sigh, Cole nudged his horse forward. His boots brushed against the fence as he crossed the boundary line. A quiet sense of unease rushed over him immediately. He couldn't explain why. And the land looked peaceful, even welcoming. Yet, something inside him felt like he was walking into a place that held more meaning than he understood. The air felt different, softer, still. The ground under his horse's hooves seemed untouched for years, as if every blade of grass stood exactly where it belonged. Cole slowed his pace, feeling strangely out of place. He looked around, half expecting someone to appear, but the field looked empty. He rode a little farther, unsure of his purpose now. Curiosity had brought him over the fence. But now that he was here, he didn't quite know what he was looking for. Maybe he just wanted a moment to imagine his own ranch healthy like this. Maybe he wanted to feel hopeful again. Suddenly, a calm voice broke the silence behind him. "You shouldn't be here." Cole froze. His heart gave a startled jump. He turned slowly in his saddle and saw a woman standing a short distance away. She had appeared so quietly, he had no idea how long she had been watching him. She looked to be in her late 30s or early 40s, with long dark hair tied back loosely. She wore simple outdoor clothes, boots, jeans, a light jacket, but she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made Cole feel instantly humbled. She wasn't angry. Her expression was calm, steady, but her eyes were clear and serious. Cole cleared his throat awkwardly. "I didn't mean any trouble," he said, trying to sound respectful. "I was just looking around." "This land is sacred," the woman replied gently. "People enter only with permission and purpose. You crossed without either." Cole felt heat rising to his cheeks. He hadn't expected to be caught, and he certainly hadn't expected such a composed confrontation. Most people would have yelled or demanded he leave. But this woman spoke in a way that made him feel like a child caught doing something thoughtless. "I'm sorry," he said, because it felt like the only honest thing to say. "I'm struggling with my grazing land. I saw the grass here and I just thought I'd take a look." The woman nodded slowly, her gaze softening just a bit. "I understand the land has been hard on many this year. But sacred places are meant to be protected. They carry stories, history, meaning. We must treat them with care." Cole shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to long conversations, especially not ones where he felt this much at fault. "I didn't realize," he murmured. "Not really. Anyway, my name is Evelyn Red Cloud," she said. "I help look after this area. I make sure the land stays respected and undisturbed." Cole nodded awkwardly, unsure what to say next. Evelyn's calm presence was unlike anything he had encountered. She wasn't threatening him, but she wasn't letting him off lightly either. Every word she spoke felt like it carried weight. "You didn't cause harm today," she said gently. "But stepping onto this land without understanding it is still a kind of harm. It shows a lack of knowledge. Not bad intention, but knowledge matters." Cole felt something shift in him, something like shame mixed with curiosity. He had lived his whole life close to the Blackfoot Nation, yet he had never taken the time to learn their traditions or understand their land. He realized suddenly how careless he had been. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "I should have known better." Evelyn studied him for a moment, then nodded once more. "It is good that you understand. Take that understanding back with you. Let it guide how you treat all land, not just your own." Cole sat there on his horse, unsure how to respond. He wasn't used to being spoken to with such honesty, kind, but firm. Her words weren't meant to punish him. They were meant to teach him. And that difference struck him deeply. "I'll leave," he said, gently turning his horse. "And I won't come back here without permission." "That is the right choice," Evelyn replied. "Walk with respect, and the land will respond in its own time." As Cole rode back across the boundary line, he felt a strange mixture of emotions: relief at leaving the restricted area, embarrassment over being caught, and something else, something he couldn't name yet. Evelyn's presence lingered in his thoughts. Her calm voice, her steady gaze, her way of guiding him without anger. She had handled the situation with a patience he hadn't expected. When he reached his own land again, the dry grass looked even more tired than before. But Cole wasn't thinking only about the grass anymore. He was thinking about Evelyn's words, about sacred land and the meaning behind it. He had always believed land was just land, something to work, something to maintain. But now he wondered if he had been missing something much deeper his entire life. That night, he sat on his porch long after the sun went down. The stars glittered above him like tiny lanterns. He replayed the encounter in his mind, over and over. The quiet power in Evelyn's voice. The way she spoke about land as if it were a living story. He felt humbled, unsettled, and strangely inspired all at once. For the first time in a long while, Cole didn't think about his ranch's problems or the bills waiting on his desk. He thought about what it meant to truly respect the earth he lived on. And he knew, deep inside, that he would never look at land the same way again. In the days that followed, Cole found himself thinking about Evelyn more often than he expected. Not in a romantic way, not yet, but in a thoughtful, almost reflective way. Her words had settled deep inside him, and every time he looked at his land, he heard her calm voice reminding him about respect, care, and understanding. He spent mornings checking his property as usual, but he noticed things he hadn't noticed before. Areas that had been overgrazed. Places where the soil needed time to rest. Small patches of grass that were trying to grow but never got the chance. It was as if his eyes had changed. He wasn't just looking at land anymore, he was seeing it. One afternoon, as he worked near the boundary fence, he kept glancing toward the sacred land, not with selfish hope, but with a new sense of curiosity and appreciation. He wondered about the stories Evelyn mentioned. What history lived beyond the fence? What memories? What traditions? Eventually, his curiosity grew stronger than his hesitation. He decided he needed to speak to Evelyn again, not because he had to, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. He wanted to make things right, even if only in a small way. 2 days later, Cole saddled his horse and rode toward the same boundary line. But this time, he didn't cross it. He stayed on his side, stopped his horse, and waited. He didn't know if she would appear, but something told him she often walked the land she cared for. The wind brushed softly through the grass. A few minutes passed. Then he saw her, walking slowly along the edge of the sacred field. She looked peaceful, almost part of the landscape itself. When she noticed him waiting, she didn't seem surprised. She came closer, stopping a few steps away from the fence. "You came back," she said gently. Cole nodded, keeping his voice respectful. "Yes, but I stayed on my land this time." A small smile touched her lips. "That is good to see." He took a breath. "I didn't come to trespass again. I came because I want to understand what this land means to you, to your people." 1, 2, and Evelyn studied him for a moment, as if trying to measure the honesty behind his words. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her. "You may ask," she said softly, "and I can tell you what I know." She stepped closer to the fence, and Cole dismounted so he could stand on equal ground. The conversation felt important, and standing tall above her on a horse didn't feel right. Evelyn began to talk about the sacred land. She explained how it was once a place of gathering for her ancestors, where families met during certain seasons. She described how elders had walked the paths here, offering prayers of gratitude. She told him about the plants, the meaning of the wind patterns, and how every stone had a place in their history. Her words were gentle, patient, and filled with a sense of belonging. Cole listened intently, his eyes tracing the landscape with new understanding. The tall grass seemed to hold more than just roots. The hills looked older, wiser. Even the air felt different now, that he knew the stories woven into it. "No one is allowed here without purpose," Evelyn said softly. "Not because we want to keep people out, but because this place is meant to be kept whole. It must stay peaceful." Cole nodded slowly. "I understand more now. I never thought about land in this way before." "Many people don't," she replied. "They see land as a tool, not a living memory." Her words settled into him with quiet strength. He realized that all these years, he had treated his ranch like a job instead of a living part of his life. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "and I want to take better care of my land. I want to give it time to heal." Evelyn's eyes softened. "That is a good step. Land responds when people care." They talked for a long time, far longer than Cole usually spoke to anyone. He felt no rush, no awkwardness. There was something calming about Evelyn, something grounding. She wasn't trying to instruct him or judge him. She was simply sharing what she knew, offering it openly. After that day, Cole found himself making real changes. He created new grazing rotations so the soil could rest. He repaired old irrigation lines to save more water. He planted native grasses that would help the land recover. At first, it felt like a lot of work, but as days passed, he began to enjoy the process. It made him feel connected, purposeful, like he was doing something good, not for profit, but for the land itself. A week later, Evelyn visited the boundary fence. Cole was fixing a section of wire when he saw her approaching. He wiped his hands and walked over. "How is your land doing?" she asked. "Better, I think," Cole replied. I can already see small changes. Maybe it's just in my head, but it feels like the land is breathing easier. Evelyn smiled. That means you are listening. They talked again, and soon it became a habit. Sometimes she would stop by while walking her path. Sometimes Cole would stand near the fence if he saw her in the distance. They shared simple conversations about the weather, the land, their families, and their work. It was never rushed. It was always honest. Over time, a quiet friendship formed between them. Cole admired Evelyn's patience and wisdom. Evelyn appreciated Cole's willingness to learn and change. They came from different worlds, but they found common ground in the earth itself. One afternoon, Evelyn invited him formally and with permission to walk a small part of the sacred land with her. Not deep inside, just along the edge, where visitors were sometimes allowed if guided by a steward. Cole accepted with genuine gratitude. As he walked beside her, he felt the land in a way he never had before. Every step felt careful, meaningful. He noticed the scent of wildflowers he had never smelled. He heard the soft rustle of grass, as if it were whispering. He saw tracks of small animals he usually never paid attention to. Everything felt alive. You see it differently now, Evelyn said, noticing his quiet awe. I do, Cole admitted. It feels like this land has been speaking all along, but I never knew how to hear it. That is how learning begins, she replied. Their walks became occasional but special moments. Each time, Cole learned something new, not just about the land, but about himself. He realized he didn't want to live in frustration or fear anymore. He wanted to live with understanding. Months passed gently. Fall turned to winter, and winter softened into spring. Cole's ranch slowly recovered. The grass grew greener. The soil felt healthier. The cattle looked stronger. And Cole himself felt lighter, as if some old weight had finally been lifted. He didn't become perfect overnight, but he became more aware, more thoughtful, more connected to the world around him. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Cole found himself standing at the fence again. Evelyn was there too, looking out at the glowing sky. I'm grateful for everything you've taught me, Cole said quietly. Evelyn turned to him, her face warm in the soft light. I didn't change your life, Cole. I only showed you a path. You chose to walk it. Maybe, he said. But I wouldn't have known the path existed without you. She smiled, and there was a peaceful understanding in her eyes. In the end, she said, the land teaches us all. We only need to listen. 2. And standing there beneath the fading sky, Cole felt something he hadn't felt in years: deep gratitude. Not just for Evelyn, but for the land, the lessons, and the unexpected connection that had transformed him in the most gentle, meaningful way.